7 minutes to 8. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, we start today focusing on this arms deal, and then the arguments continue. You saw some accounts in the front pages of some of the papers we went through today. Well, during this morning to discuss this, we'll start off with Mr. Femi Fani-Kayode, who is a former Minister of Aviation and a member of the PDP. Thank you for coming on this morning. Well, about this, I mean, yes, you do remember the first time out, and now the news broke yesterday, and then there were those who, all shades of opinions really, about this. And if you go through the paper, oh, there you go. It's even in the front page this time around, $5.7 billion. What can you tell us about this?
Well, first of all, I haven't read the reports in the newspapers this morning, but I can tell you what I know about it, and I'm basing my submissions on the comments that were made by the Office of the NSA, and I have every reason to believe that they were saying nothing but the truth. And for me, it's a completely different issue, this $5.7 million to the previous one, which is a little bit more complicated, needs more explanation. As far as I'm aware, this was a simple transaction of a Nigerian company that entered into an agreement with a foreign company, which was apparently based in South Africa. The monies were transferred in the normal way, and the money was paid for arms in order to assist in the struggle against Boko Haram. Unfortunately, the South African company could not come up with the goods. They couldn't deliver the weapons, or they refused to deliver the weapons, and that was the end of it. And the company that initiated the process now asked for their money back, and the money was refunded. Now, in the course of being refunded, the South African authorities, for reasons best known to themselves, decided to simply grab the money and hold on to it, and yet again raise questions about the propriety of our country and also the integrity of our security services and so on and so forth. And that's basically what is going on, as far as I'm aware, on this issue. And I think that it's something that does give me, as a Nigerian, some cause for concern that whilst we're fighting a war which has just begun to turn in our favor as a consequence of the gallant efforts of our soldiers, that the procurement of arms for our armed forces is something that people are playing politics with. I have deep concerns about that, and I have my views as to why it is that the South Africans are behaving in this way.
Well, why do you say that people are playing politics with it?
The reason I said that is this. It's a perfectly legitimate, straightforward transaction. The other side could not perform. They could not, or they refused to perform. And the logical thing is to return the money, which we demanded. And the money has not been returned. The South African authorities have now come in again and said, well, they are looking into it with the possibility of criminal investigation and so on and so forth, money laundering and so on, which of course fits the narrative of what the process that began a while back. What they have not told the whole world is the fact that there are elements, there are elements in this country, some of them within the opposition, in fact all of them within the opposition, some key opposition figures are very, very close. I won't mention names here, but are very close to President Zuma. In fact, they funded his campaign. And it seems to me to be a very interesting thing that at any point in time to do with South Africa, when it comes to this war effort, that the integrity of the Nigerian security services and the government are brought to question. Mistakes have been made, like 1 or 2 mistakes were made on the 9.3 million cash issue. But nothing more than that, nothing fundamentally serious to begin to say, tell the world that we're a nation of money launderers, arms dealers and shady characters with shady pastors and shady presidents of Christian Association of Nigeria who are just flying money all over the world. We are in the middle of a war here. We're trying to procure arms. There is some element of conspiracy in the international community, particularly the Americans, I have to say this, who have simply refused to honor most of their obligations to us in terms of procurement of arms. They have stopped us from procuring arms in the more what word should I use for that? Obvious way. That is the normal transactions. So we've had to resort to various ways of getting arms by ourselves. And that's what we've been doing in order to arm our soldiers at the war front. Yet some people are bringing this to question, and I find that a little bit uncomfortable.
Well, anyway, they're Nigerians and they would like to ask questions.
Sure.
I've been trying to follow up just like every other Nigerian, and you have also taken the pain to write on this, the cash, the jet, and Pastor Ayori Sajafo. Let's first of all look at the movement of this amount of money.
Sure.
You were once in the aviation ministry.
Yes.
How often does this happen? And is it legal for you to move such amount of money, knowing full well that you're supposed to at least, well, declare, that's the word used, when you get to the next point?
Absolutely, indeed. Well, first of all, let me tell you that there's absolutely nothing that, as far as I'm aware, that is illegal about the movement of cash, or that is illegal about the procurement of arms or any other legitimate transaction. You can enter any transaction with cash. It depends on what you feel like doing. And the security services and intelligence agencies do it all the time. And as long as the money was properly appropriated and was being handled by the relevant agency, the National Security, the Office of the National Security Advisor has its own budget, and they're accountable to the president and, of course, the legislators. They could be asked questions. But as long as this money is properly appropriated, there's no question of any illegality, as long as it's for a legitimate purpose, which in this case, as far as I'm aware, it was for a legitimate purpose. The issue that I think raised eyebrows was the fact that the money was not declared at South African customs. I think that is where there's certainly a problem. And, but the idea of money laundering doesn't arise, because the allegation is that, oh, this is a case of money laundering. I mean, when the federal government steps in and says, look, this is our money, we wanted to use it for the purpose of buying arms, and it's not dirty money, it's not stolen money, it's not drug money, it's not money being used for terrorism. It's our money coming from our intelligence agencies, which are supposed to use to be, buy arms for our war effort. We're in the middle of a war. That really should end it. But certainly, the money needed to have been confiscated. And it's now a question, because it wasn't declared, it's now a question of negotiation between the two governments as to how to get it back. Now, coming specifically to your question about whether this sort of thing has happened before, I can tell you clearly and categorically, as a former Minister of Aviation, this sort of thing happens all the time, because there's nothing illegal about it. The security agencies have their own way of doing things. Sometimes they use bank transfers, sometimes they use cash. Now, when you're in the middle of a war, as we are today, of course it would happen. It happened when we were fighting a war in Liberia and our boys were there fighting. It happened when our boys were fighting in Sierra Leone. It happened when our boys were fighting in Chad during Shagari's regime. It happened under Abacha when we had a war effort in Bakassi, though thankfully it didn't come to actual war. And it has happened under successive governments. But these issues are best explained and defended by the intelligence agencies themselves. They have their own code of conduct, the way they operate. But I'm satisfied with one thing, and that is this, that there is absolutely nothing illegal in such covert transactions. They are covert in nature, but that doesn't make them illegal. There's one other aspect. I'm going back to this point, that where you have a situation where literally there's an unofficial arms embargo on us, imposed covertly and quietly by the Americans. And there's also this attitude that South Africans have developed ever since Nigeria has been declared as the largest economy on the African continent. At every point in time, they try to discredit us. And at every point in time, they try to make it look as if we're a nation of criminals. As far as I'm concerned, this is unacceptable, and this has to also be factored in. There is a narrative here, which I think is unfortunate, and I don't think it's fair on us at all.